The other one, I was really, really lucky. I bought a ticket and went to go see him by myself in New York City to see Springsteen on Broadway this summer. And that show is, I mean, for anybody who's seen it, it's incredible. It's the first time I went to a concert and cried for 2 hours straight because everything, just the way he told all the stories and how, I mean, he's really an amazing, amazing story. And I worried about being able to, I worried about the show feeling authentic. I mean, he's doing a scripted show over and over again, but it felt so real and so personal. And I was in the third row and you're just so close to him. It was like really having him in your house playing these songs for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and joining me tonight is Chris Haase.
Haase.
Yep. Thank you. I should have asked that before we hit recorded.
Right.
That's the beauty of editing. No, I'm kidding. Chris, welcome to the show. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan here in the heart of Minnesota. I live in Minneapolis. Me and my girlfriend and our dog, our 12-year-old dog, Newton. And I've just been a big Bruce Springsteen fan since about my early 20s. So I'm just excited to be on and talk about my hero.
Well, that is so great. I'm very cool. I always like to start at the beginning. So talk about, where did you grow up and what kind of music did your family listen to?
Yeah, well, I grew up on a farm in southern Minnesota, so very south, rural Minnesota. My hometown was 200 people. My class, until our schools consolidated with other towns, was 13 people, and I was related to about 8 of them.
Yeah.
So I come from a very small rural community, and music for growing up was pretty much non-existent in my family. My folks were hardworking, listened to the Farm Report. Occasionally, I would get some AM radio coming through on my grandma's radio in her kitchen while she was making lunch or making dinner. So I didn't listen to much music with my family growing up. And it was about maybe my sophomore year of high school. A friend of mine was really into the Beatles and just lent me a copy of a Beatles CD. And it was like a door just blew open in my mind. And I've been a hardcore rock and roll music fan since that moment.
So Chris, were no kind of music, like they weren't, as we call down south, church going people with, religious music, or just?
Yeah. So, I mean, we had like maybe 10 vinyl records in the house.
Okay.
They didn't get spun very much. I did grow up Catholic, so there was a lot of Catholic music, a lot of Christmas music around the holidays.
Okay.
But by and large, my folks were listening to talk radio and listening to farm reports.
Okay.
I think that's why when I finally got exposed to it later on, that I was all in. Like, I'm just making up for all this lost time.
Yeah.
Where has this music been?
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting.
Yeah.
When you did, like, okay, let's talk a little bit more. You discover the Beatles. And so that was your gateway drug, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about what were the next steps? What else did you do?
Yeah, I went. It was like I experienced the Beatles again, like as if they were happening to me at that moment. I bought all the records in chronological order, and I got really, really into the songwriting part of it. I was just blown away that they were writing their own music and how I never really had thought about that before. And from moving on from the Beatles to other songwriters and performers, it was the songwriting piece I really, really, really was after.
Okay.
Folks who wrote songs. And I think with the Beatles, originally it was the melodies that pulled me in, and later on with Bob Dylan, and then ultimately Bruce Springsteen, it was the lyrics and musicianship that really sucked me in.
Okay. Do you remember when you discovered Bruce, and can you articulate why he spoke to you so much?
Yeah. So I, by and large, was aware of, but not really into Bruce all the way up until maybe my oh gosh, how old was I? In 2002.
Okay.
So I was born in 78. So I was around 24, 25. And, he was getting a lot of press for The Rising, about to be released. And I had some friends that were really, really into Bruce Springsteen. And by this time, I was playing in a band and writing my own songs, and we were gigging out quite a bit, but I never really listened to much Bruce. And so some buddies of mine were really starting to get on me. Like, if you're listening to Dylan and you like singer-songwriters, you have to listen to Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
In my head,
Yeah, sure.
he's the Born in the USA, Dancing in the Dark guy that was really popular in the 80s. And I didn't have any sort of understanding of anything he'd done prior to that and after. It was just like this huge black hole in my understanding of,
Yeah.
of what Bruce had done. And a friend of mine gave me a copy of The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. And the CD sat in my car for probably a week before I actually put it on. I had a long drive home from a gig that my band had played, and was driving home by myself. And I was like, what in the world is this? This is Bruce Springsteen. And that record just, I can't even describe how blown away I was. I couldn't believe it was the same person that sang Born in the USA. And I'm a fan of that record and that song, but it just seemed like I couldn't believe the layers and the levels of diversity he had in his musicianship and his songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I did kind of the same thing I did with the Beatles. Like, I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to go back and buy all his records in a row, all the way up through to The Rising, and just listen to them in order as they're released. And it was like it rivals that Beatles experience in my high school years. Is just one of the most amazing experiences in my life. And just walking around and trying to convince people who already were fans, like, do you understand how great Bruce Springsteen is?
No, you don't understand, right? Like, no,
Right.
You don't understand. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And around that time, lucky for me, he put out The Rising, which I think is just one of his greatest records.
I agree.
It just stands the test of time. Not all, maybe some of the newer records over time will sink in a little bit more with me, but that record really resonated with me from the first track to the last track.
How old were you about this time?
I was 24, 25 years old.
Okay. And did you lose anyone on 9/11, or was it just the music somehow spoke to you?
No, it just really spoke to me. And I think just how somebody could tell the story of that time,
right?
And how a lot of people felt. And I think he could really paint the picture for how people across the country felt.
Yeah.
And I think he was also telling really good stories about if you had lost somebody or you knew somebody that was lost on that day. I mean, he was trying to make you step into their shoes and feel it a little bit. Not that you really can, but it really kind of heightened the empathy for the people that had to really experience that firsthand. I mean, we all did as Americans, but the people that actually lost a loved one, it's really an amazing thing to listen to those songs and think, my God, how awful that must feel.
One of my favorite movies is an old John Ford movie, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. And, when the legend is better than the truth, you print the legend. So whether it's true or not, I want it to be true that, we need you, Bruce, after 9/11. And, when it comes to this, gosh, and you think about, and I told the story multiple times on the podcast, so I know you haven't heard it, Chris, but my listeners have, so I apologize, listeners. I had a guy on earlier this year, and he was talking about that he was a huge fan, and he was at the reunion tour, like in the late 90s, right?
Yeah.
And he said he remembered standing in the pit in the middle of the show going, this is it. This is the ultimate it's ever going to be. He said, they've broken apart. They've come back. They've toured. They sound great. And maybe every 3 or 4 years, they'll do a greatest hits tour. But, as an E Street band member, we have reached the ultimate.
Yeah.
And he said, I think back on that, and I said, I would want to pull that guy aside and go, you have The Rising. You have Wrecking Ball. You have Magic. You have Broadway.
Yep.
You have Western Stars. You have an autobiography, and you have Letter to You coming. Like, no. That was halftime, right? Like there's a whole nother second half of a game for them to do. And I really do think that The Rising started that kind of almost the second wind as a creative person.
Yeah, it seemed like it did, I kind of lost sight of everything in the 90s, still doesn't quite sit with me as like the quintessential Bruce. Still good. But it's everything prior to the 90s and after the 90s that really just sticks out in my mind as the stuff that's the most meaningful.
Sure, absolutely. So I always like to preface this, Chris, with the amount of times you've seen Bruce live is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are.
Yeah, right.
Depending on your age, where you live, economic situations, it can be very difficult to see Bruce. Right. But for the record, have you gotten to see him? And if so, have you counted the shows?
I have. And I believe I'm up to, very, very lucky to say that I'm up to 8.
Good. Very nice.
I think it's 8. Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. What was your first show?
My first show was the Rising Tour here in Minnesota. He played St. Paul at the XL Energy Center.
Okay.
I went and I brought my little sister with me. So she would have been 15 at the time.
Right.
And it was unbelievable to see him live.
Yeah.
We were on the floor. We weren't in the very pit, but we were right at the fence near the pit. So we had like a nice break and a really good sight line from the floor to see him. And that was the first time I looked at him and thought, my God, he looks so young.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as he comes out and I can remember him like just first time he raises his Telecaster in the air and counts the band in, like, it's unbelievable. Everybody who's seen him would get that, or if you can get the same vibe from him seeing live on TV as well, it's just an experience.
Mm-hmm. Any stories from shows you want to share?
I think the one show that really stood out, there's 2 shows actually. The first one was the Vote for Change tour he did in 2004 during the Carey run up. And it was him and REM and John Fogerty and Brad Eyes. Neil Young showed up out of nowhere.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment. I just recorded another podcast.
Yeah.
And the guy who I was on was at that show as well.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome. It was, it was just crazy. And at the end, they played Rockin' in the Free World with Neil Young. But I think the part that sticks out to me the most is Bruce came out and played Born in the USA like he does on acoustic, instrumentally.
Yeah.
And then kicked it, he played the national anthem and then went into a little bit Born in the USA. And then the whole band kicked in at Born in the USA. And I think I was just so proud. I was just proud of Bruce and proud to be a Bruce fan, and everything that he was trying to stand for in that moment just really felt good. Not to get political about anything, but
no, I understand
the power of rock and roll music. It's an amazing thing. So that's one moment that sticks out to me.
Yeah.
The other one, I was really, really lucky. I bought a ticket and went to go see him by myself in New York City to see Springsteen on Broadway this summer. And that show is, for anybody who's seen it, it's incredible. It's the first time I went to a concert and cried for 2 hours straight, because everything, just the way he told all the stories and how, he's really an amazing, amazing story. And I worried about being able to, I worried about the show feeling authentic. He's doing a scripted show over and over again, but it felt so real and so personal. And I was in the 3rd row and you're just so close to him. It was like really having him in your house playing these songs for you. It was great.
Had you not seen the first run?
I'd only seen it on Netflix.
Okay.
Yep.
So you kind of knew a little bit what was coming on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I sort of only half watched it on Netflix. I had people were around. It was kind of on, but I wasn't focused on it because I always knew if he plays that again, I'm going to go see it.
Okay. Right. Very nice.
Yeah.
Good. So what I love the idea is when I was able to go on the first Broadway run, lucky enough, and I had heard a few people talk about that there were some poorly behaved people around them.
Mhm.
And so I was sitting there and I was like trying to be real subtle, like, so we're all going to be quiet, right? And the guy next to me says, I think the only sound you're going to hear is me crying.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I think that'll be all of us. I said, so
Yeah.
I think that's forgiven.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so absolutely, that's great.
Yeah.
Any other stories from shows that you want to share? Anything stands out from you from Broadway? Any couple of highlights that really spoke to you?
I think the song he played for his mother was just so beautiful.
I wish.
It's hard for me to talk about that song much. It makes me think about, even though my mother's fine and she's not suffering from Alzheimer's or anything, but it just makes me think about how much I love my mom, and it's just how precious they are. And it's just one of the greatest moments I've ever seen in a concert, where just the whole theater is crying, but feeling joy at the same time. Such an amazing, amazing thing. That really sticks out to me. And I think maybe the first time I heard Born to Run live was like, it's really hard to describe for anybody who hasn't, even if you're not a casual Bruce Springsteen fan, just the energy of the room when he plays that song with the E Street Band is just, I just wish everybody could experience that one time, whether you're a fan or not. It's an amazing thing. It just sums up the thoughts that every, I think, young man has at some point in their life. And then you hear the band play it so well and you experience that, and it's just goosebumps. It's an amazing thing.
Chris, I often bring that up. One of my best friends, Sam, will always say, does he have to play Born to Run? I mean, wouldn't you rather hear, something from Tracks, or, something obscure from, from Ghost of Tom Joad, or, something else. And I said, but Sam, someone is seeing Bruce for the first time.
Right.
And if you go to see Bruce Springsteen live for the first time, you're going to be disappointed you don't hear the Born to Run. Because I know a couple people who went to the second Broadway run who had never seen before. I had two people join me, and they both loved the show. But they said there was this little bitty sadness that the first time I'm seeing Bruce and I'm not hearing Born to Run. So I think you're right. I think you're spot on.
I had heard that he had switched it out on the Broadway show.
Yeah.
I've been lucky to see it live with the E Street Band. So I was kind of A-okay with it.
Sure. Because you're getting, I'll see you in my dreams. Like, okay, this is a good swat. This is a good switch.
And it really seemed to fit the moment of the show much more eloquently than Born to Run. Like, I'll listen to Born to Run at any time for any reason.
Absolutely.
But
yes.
It really fit the vibe of the show, I think. Yeah. So, and I think for anybody who gets to see Bruce, if you can see Born to Run live with the E Street Band, that's the straight dope right there. That's the way you want to see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there is something about that when the lights go on and mm-hmm. You're all screaming your heads off and yelling. The first time I went to see him was the Rising tour. And my wife knew no songs. She knew Working on the Highway, and that was it, right? Like he did, and of course Born to Run, which she doesn't like. And she's like, did you enjoy the show? And I said, Linda, if I had walked in, he played Born to Run, and he'd like, good night, I would have been happy, right? Yeah. Like check off the list. I got to see Bruce live. So yeah, no problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
Did you do anything else in New York besides Bruce, or was it a fly in, see Bruce, and then come back?
Yeah, I was there for 3 days, 2 nights. I hadn't been to New York City for fun, and boy, had it been a while.
Wow.
The last time I was there, and I saw him, I was there for a week, and I happened to see him on the Seeger Sessions tour at Madison.
Oh, nice.
But anyway, so when I was there this time, I went, I saw the High Line, which I hadn't walked that before. I always do a like cruise on the East River in the Hudson and just look at the skyline. It's like my favorite part is just looking at the skyline in New York City. And then just walked all over, like I walked all over the city, just ate food and kept walking. So it was great. It was a quick trip, but it was wonderful.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. You kind of talked about The Rising. You talked about other thing. Are there other albums, songs that mean a lot to you that have a special meaning to you? Maybe because
I could think, I was just kind of thinking on this a little bit today. So I live in Minneapolis and I'm about 3 blocks north of the 3rd precinct, which is where it was kind of the epicenter of our kind of civil unrest about a year and a half ago with the murder of George Floyd. And it was quite it was a really hard time for our city. Let alone that it was chaos, of course, but everyone was just a sense of heartbreak. There's so much destruction. Nobody really knew what was going to come next, as far as, is our city going to heal or is it going to continue to just degrade or what's going to happen? It's a very strange time when the National Guard are, they're staging right across the street from your house in the park. It's a weird deal.
Oh yeah, it's gotta be.
Yeah. And the 3rd night after, I think the height of it, my girlfriend and I walked up to Lake Street and where a lot of this had taken place, right across the street from the 3rd precinct that I burnt. And, it was heartbreaking, and came home and one of the first songs I listened to is My City of Ruins. And that song, it's just so powerful for so many different reasons. And I read it was originally written for, his hometown, and later was made, because it's a perfect fitting song for 9/11. But I also remember listening to it around the time of, when Katrina happened, and I was listening to when there was a tragedy in my city. That song itself, well, I don't listen to it that often, but I do listen to it when something terrible has happened in a place that I really love, whether it's New York or New Orleans or my hometown of Minneapolis. I think it's just an amazing, amazing song. And I don't know, that's the song that always comes to mind. I think is what's the most meaningful Bruce Springsteen song? To me, it's that song. It's there when I need it.
I totally agree with you. Have you seen the piano player and the violinist in a church do a version?
No.
I will send you the link. It's on YouTube. And once again, to talk about Chris, that is one of his favorite versions. It is just it truly, I think of it as a hymn anyway, but to hear that it looks like either a Episcopal or a Catholic church, and that grand piano and everything is beautiful. I'll send you the link. I think it's such a powerful song. And you're right. There's so many, not just Bruce, other great musicians, but that song, can be about New Orleans, right? About 9/11, about, just this. I know I had a guy on last year who the first time that Bruce had played Northern Ireland, and he played My City in Ruins.
Oh, wow.
And the guy was just crying because of all the strife and all the troubles there in Ireland that, same thing for America's Skin, like 41 Shots, like how many just different ways you can talk about the violence and the fear of, if you're a good police officer, which I believe most of them are, that fear of, if I make a mistake, oh my goodness, but at the same time, I can't make a mistake. I've got to, what do we do that? So yeah, very, very powerful stuff. Right. And I, it's gotta be surreal to be that close to this, that the whole world is talking about.
Yeah, it was a wild time. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, but I do feel grateful that I had the opportunity to go through
Yeah.
something like that in the in my community.
Yeah.
It's time will tell how everything shakes out, but for the most part, it's really made the way I feel it's made our community stronger.
Good.
It's made us ask a lot of hard questions of each other. There's even a citywide election today that is really kind of called a lot of things to the carpet, and the city's going to make some decisions, and so we'll see what happens. I don't know. It is really weird to be at the epicenter and just really be at the focus of what the world is talking about. Living
Yeah.
less than a mile away from where it happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's so close.
It's crazy.
Yeah. To hopefully happier news.
Yeah.
Talk about the Seeger sessions at Madison Square Gardens. That must have been just an amazing show.
It was a party. It was really a party. I'd never been to Madison Square Garden before. So
it's on Chris's wish list, right? He'd love to see the Mavericks play there. He'd love to see Bruce play there, right? Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it was my first time in New York City, and it just happened to coincide when Bruce was playing there. That was just total happenstance, which was, I felt so lucky.
Yes.
So got tickets, spent way too much on them.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was really, really great. I had seen a lot of, by then I was really into Bruce. So, I was catching every performance on TV, seeing as much of him as I possibly could. And I loved that band and I loved that record. A lot of people maybe didn't, but I just thought it was such a cool idea. And the way that the arrangements of the songs were really, really great. And I was playing in a band at the time, and I remember trying to get them to play some of these songs. And that was not, they were not going to have it.
Right.
They liked Pete Seeger and they liked Bruce Springsteen, but they were not going to play those songs at the bars that we were playing at. But seeing him in Madison Square Garden, it was great. And I still would love to see him with the E Street Band there, but that's a pretty rare experience, I think. So, and those concerts, there's recently some videos I saw on YouTube of for him at Jazz Fest in New Orleans playing those shows. Man, that band was so tight and so good, and those arrangements were so unique and cool. I just think it's a great record. I loved it, and that show was awesome.
Yeah, Sam, who I was just talking about a few minutes ago, said that going to the Seeger sessions was as close to a religious experience as he's ever had. He was raised, as he said, Jewish.
Yeah.
So they did not spend a lot of time there, and so he said it was just something amazing for him. So absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the latest two, Letter to You and Western Stars. Chris, what are your thoughts about them?
I have not listened to I've listened to all of Western Stars. I have not listened to Letter to You in its entirety. And I think I'm saving them. I'm not exactly sure why. Western Stars, it hasn't gripped me yet. And it's with all Bruce records, if I don't get into them right away, I got to come back to them at some point. And with Letter to You, it hasn't been a huge record for me yet. Okay. Although I'll See You in My Dreams, when he played that at Broadway, I was like, okay, I need to give this record a shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And have you seen have you seen the film Western Stars?
Not all of it. I've seen bits and pieces.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's worth putting that on, getting your popcorn and your favorite adult beverage and enjoying it. I think I've had people who are not Bruce Springsteen fans tell me they were glad they saw the film. It was good to them.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have both vinyls. They're here. And it is very soon to be wintertime in Minnesota.
Oh, okay. Yes.
When it happens, people don't really leave their house for a good 4 to 6 months, depending on how bad the winter is.
Yes.
So I am certain that I will get around to it.
I've always lived in the South. Mm-hmm. And so I get a kick out of that, thinking of, living up north, right? We're down to a fourth of the jug of milk. We better get milk, right? We like you can't oh, I've got under a half a tank of gas, I should go ahead and get gas, right?
Right.
Because it's it's always mild here in Dallas.
Right.
So yeah, I can imagine that's we want to let's stay bundled up and let's not have to get out if we don't need to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate living here in the city. We still, we can go out whenever. But
Sure.
growing up, we would stockpile.
Oh, I imagine.
Oh my gosh. We lived outside of town. So, you go to town and get groceries, you get them for the month.
Yes.
And they last the entire month.
What kind of farm?
So we had land and livestock, mostly hogs, and then a little bit of cattle. And then my grandfather on my mom's side did dairy, but I didn't have a ton of exposure to dairy. Thank goodness. That's a lot of getting up early.
So my grandfather owned a dairy farm in Rose Pine, Louisiana. So my mother's father. And yes, I would not ever help Grandpa in the mornings because that was just way too early. I mean, way too early. And we'd always ask, okay, why couldn't you just train the cows? Okay, we're going to do 10 a.m., or 9 a.m. And then, but I guess because the whole idea is it's got to be 12 hours. So you don't want to be milking at 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Right.
But and Grandpa went to bed pretty early. Grandpa had a nap and he went to bed pretty early. So but there, I can remember that. So a couple questions for the future.
Sure.
Chris, we all are hoping that he's going to tour in 2022.
Yeah.
What kind of tour do you think we get? Are we going to get a greatest hits tour? Do you think he's going to be heavy on, Letter to You? Do you think he'll do any Western Stars? Do you think he'll do a kind of career retrospective? What are your gut reaction of what do you think he's going to do and what do you want him to do?
Yeah, well, I have a feeling that he's going to do kind of a career retrospective, and he'll grab a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I think some of the staples will be there, like Badlands, Born to Run, that type of stuff will always be there. I'm hopeful that he continues to play his newer stuff. Play some stuff off Western Stars, even Working on a Dream, play those songs. There's some really, I would love to hear Outlaw Pete live. I think it's a great song.
Well, and I said this, I used to ask this early in my career when I first started doing this, right? And I had a guy, he said he would be happy with a show that was Darkness. He did no songs past Darkness. It's all Darkness back to, Incident and Greetings, right?
Yeah.
And I said, and I would be happy with a Tunnel to Love going forward, right? I would be okay just because you would hear so many songs you don't normally get to hear, right? So I that'll be cool. I think that's good. You already kind of answered one of these, Outlaw Pete, but what other songs are you chasing? What other songs would you love to hear live that you haven't gotten a chance to hear yet?
That I haven't had a chance to hear yet. It was the E Street Shuffle was for the longest time was a song, but he played it one of the second to last time I saw him here in St. Paul.
Okay.
I did get a chance to see the River tour, so I got to hear the entire, the river in its entirety, which was really, really cool.
That checked off a lot of people's boxes when he did that. Yes.
There's a lot of songs on there I wanted to hear. I haven't heard the band do Candy's Room live. Darkness on the Edge of Town is my favorite record.
Okay.
And it's the one I can always go back to and listen to over and over again. I think for me, it feels like the most moody, if that makes sense.
Sure,
aside from Nebraska, which is
right.
That's too dark. That's like whiskey. I can't drink that every night,
Sure. Yeah, no, I get that.
But I think it's Candy's Room is what I'd like to hear live. I love that song on the record. It's so, it's just so unique and how the band plays it and how the hi-hat drives that first verse and the piano. there aren't a lot of songs like that. I don't know if it would sound as good live these days, but I'd still love to hear it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Any others that are on your list?
Candy's Room is the biggest one, I think. There was a hidden song at the end of Magic called Terry's Song.
Yeah.
I love that song. I think it's an amazing, amazing tune.
It really is.
Live. I don't know if it's well known enough for everyone to get, but if Bruce ever feels like playing it, I hope he sure does. It's a great
Yeah,
tune.
I think that's a great song. I think it's a wonderful song.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So Chris, I always ask this, and partly because I had a guy on the show 3-4 years ago. We ended the interview. I turned off the recording and I thanked him for being on there. And he said, oh, well, next time on there, I should tell you about the time I got drunk with the E Street Band. What? What? How? You're on a Bruce Springsteen podcast. How do you not lead with that story?
Yeah, that's the first story.
Right. That's the first story, right? So is there anything I should have asked you, Chris, that I haven't?
Oh gosh, there'll be things I think of tomorrow, but
right, absolutely.
I've not met Bruce, nor have I had a drink with the E Street Band, and I'm certain I would have led with those two things.
Okay, very good. I didn't know you didn't get to make a book signing or anything.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, not yet.
Not yet. Fingers crossed. Very good.
Yep.
Good. All right. Well, if you are a friend of Chris's and you're listening to this podcast, first off, thank you for listening. Your friend did great. But I end every podcast with the Mary question. And so what that is, for those who this is your first time listening, Jay Armstrong, who is a retired English teacher in the Philadelphia area, when he was teaching, he would spend 2 days in his honors English class breaking apart Thunder Road. His class would go through all the lyrics. They would talk about the imagery Bruce uses. They would talk about his choice of words. They would talk about themes. They would compare it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken, and other modern classics. And then at the end of the 2 days, Jay looks at his class and says, "Does Mary get in the car?" So Chris, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
Absolutely. I think she does. And I mean, Bruce was so cool. If it's Bruce as the character at that point, then
right.
I can't believe anybody wouldn't.
Okay.
Telling a story so poetically. But yeah, I think she gets in the car. I don't know if it works out after that, but I think they give it a good go.
They at least try.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. Very good. Good answer, sir. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to share with the listeners?
No, none. Just thank you for having me on. I think it's so cool that you're doing this. I'm excited to go back and see all these podcasts. I just think it's like a really, really cool idea. And I know there's so many passionate stories of Bruce fans, from Bruce fans, and I know people love him for all sorts of different reasons. So I'm excited to go back and watch them, and I hope you keep making them. I think this is just a cool idea.
Well, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it. It is truly a labor of love. It was funny. The guy before said, "So how long have you been doing this?" I'm like, 6 years. What? Like, yeah. He says, "Damn, I got a lot of podcasts to listen to." So yeah. Well, thank you, Chris. Are you on social media at all? If someone wants to reach you,
I'm slowly but surely trying to get myself off of social media, so no tags or handles to promote.
Okay, very nice. I understand that. I am still debating. Twitter is what I use mostly to promote the podcast, but I still do a little bit of Facebook, and I am seriously thinking about just getting off Facebook.
Me too. It's hard to kick though. I'm on it for like there's groups and stuff on there.
Exactly right. Yeah. So yeah. And I still get people, because I'll post something, someone will go, "Oh wow, you do a podcast? Hey, I've been a fan for 30 years, or
right.
I was, I remember seeing him at my college when, there were only 40 people in the audience. I'm like, okay, let's get in. I wish I could remember the guest name, but he saw Bruce the same time period where Landau did. He wasn't at that show where I've seen the future of rock and roll, but that time period, right?
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
he looked to his date at the time and said, this is something we will tell our kids about.
Yeah.
This is what we will be talking about this year. And he says, you know what bothers me, Jesse, is there were other, like 3 or 4 years before that, he was touring and I didn't know and I didn't see him. Yeah. And I said, I have that feeling because I didn't see him my first show till 2002. I'm talking about all that. I said, damn it, you saw him in 75 and you're saying you wish you could have seen him more. I said, so it doesn't matter when you discover him, you're always wanting more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so funny, right around that time period that I thought he was so energetic and amazing when I saw him in the Rising tour. But then when like Live at the Hammersmith Odeon was released in that video, I was like, this is the coolest dude. He's been cool for so long.
Well, I don't know if you saw him on Late Night, this past week. But he.
Oh yeah.
He played the little clip when I'm 30, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah,
and Bruce is like, wow, little did I know. Now I'm 72 and I'm still doing this.
Yeah.
So that's pretty great.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that show too. That's really cool.
I'm really looking forward to that.
That's like peak that's right around the end, right after Darkness, Before the River, I believe. Yeah. And that's prime Springsteen for me.
I think you could make the argument that it's close to the height of their, obviously the Born in the USA tour was the biggest level, but at that point, it seems to be, vintage classic Springsteen. So I'm really looking forward to the film. I think it's going to be great. I think it's wonderful that Zimini is going to put that together. So absolutely. Yeah. Well, Chris, you're welcome anytime.
Oh, thank you.
So just email me, send me a note saying, hey, Jesse, I came up with this idea. Let's just talk some more. And who knows, maybe after they announce tour dates, we can have you on and we'll speculate about, or plan on when we're going to go and see. And hopefully we'll figure out a show that we can see each other. I would love to, because I have had all these episodes, I would love to be able to go to a couple of shows and go, okay, we're all meeting at X bar.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Everyone, let's come and let's hit the recorder and let's do a pregame, a tailgating for a Springsteen.
Yeah. That'd be a good time.
All right, Chris, thank you. Listeners, you please go get vaccinated. Go stay safe. Wash your hands, wear your mask. Do what needs to be done. Let's all be good to each other because that's the only way we're going to do this. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, listeners, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts, as well as a Merry Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now who does, you can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan-thinking, joy-spreading, lyric-reading, story-sharing podcast that is the one, the only, Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.